G'day guys, this is a sort of an impromptu video in terms of related to milk and milk products in general. I've just noticed both on my sort of you know feeds, and there have been a few comments here and there. I even noticed one person yesterday on PIMS sort of mentioning that they had fixed their gut and everything, and sort of they were still having issues and stuff like that. So I sort of was making a bit of milk, and basically I sort of had a sort of a brainstorm, and I said, oh, you know, and thought a bit about it, and sort of came up with maybe something that may be a solution for you. I don't, you could try it out. I mean, what I did was to find out for myself ages ago was to do a genetic test, but I did a genetic test for my whole self, and it just confirmed what I already knew, that I thought that I had lactose genes, and but sometimes that could be an issue, could be genetic, but it could also be just the milk profile. Most people don't realize that most of the pastoral genes that most Europeans and Central Asians and also Northeast have, they're basically horse based. So we basically used horses to get around. Europeans did, which conquered most of those regions from the western part of Europe all through to western China. So the horse was the main means of transport and warfare for the Indo-Europeans, plus it was the main source of milk that gave them that surplus in order to basically build up large standing armies that could undertake those military conquests which they undertook. So the consequence of that is we all have, through that entire region, a large proportion of us have lactose persistent genes. There are some people that don't, for a number of reasons, or may only have one of the alleles, not both, and that can create problems. But there's also, the general modern commercial milk is very different compared to older milks, and so there are so many varied factors. And I usually, you've heard me multiple times say, well, fix the stomach, the acidity of the stomach, and everything will flow from there, because you're taking proteins and fats, and you're breaking down those things into basic amino acids, basic fatty acids. So really you shouldn't have problems unless there's an underlying sensitivity to the type of milk for a number of factors. It could be the protein side of things, or it could be the sugar side of things. It's really hard because there are so many variables at play that it can be really hard to sort of work out for many people. And sometimes people just put their hands up and give up on really, some good nutrition, which is what dairy is. So, so this is my take on it, and an approach that I would sort of consider recommending. So in Australia, we've got this is an A2 milk that's actually produced in Australia. In other countries, it's going to be different brands, obviously, so you'll have to do your own research if you're not in the Australasian region, and or you don't have access to this specific brand of milk. And what you can do is you can try this and actually see, do I have a casein issue? So, because most commercial milk is sort of half A1, half A2, but this is just specifically A2. So you can at least say, well, it's not a casein issue. So if you try the milk, no issue, you can say, well, basically I've resolved it. I know it's a casein issue that I have. And, you can settle on that. I would also, when you're doing these tests, if you're taking a casein supplement or any sort of powder protein supplement that's got casein in it, basically give that a bit of a rest for a couple of days, so you're not actually ending up getting a sort of a false positive or whatever, result. You're getting, mixed results, so you want to take those things out for a certain period of time until you sort of settle down, and then you want to try this milk and say, well, how am I reacting to it? So at least then you can actually cover yourself and know exactly that it's a casein issue. So that's one profile. Then it could also be, the type of, the galactose, the sugar part as well. So that's always another issue. It could be the just sheer pasteurization, because you're eliminating the enzymes. You only may have one of the lactose persistent genes. So it's really hard to work out, because that is also another issue. One way of looking at that is, if you can get your hands on raw milk, then at least you can basically play around with that, give it a try, see what the resulting effects are. And if it's basically that, then at least you know that that's the issue, that it possibly is that you're missing one of the alleles and because this milk hasn't been pasteurized, it hasn't had its enzymes destroyed, at least then well, I probably have one allele, but I don't have both. So at least then that that's the issue, that is the driving issue in that regard. I mean, you could switch back to the other milk and consider trying a lactase enzyme like this one here. I mean, I'm not recommending anything. I'm just saying that you could try something like this. When people ask me, what do I take? This is what I've basically told people. It's a brand which is pretty good. It seems to work. It does the trick. Those people who have got that issue. So I usually just point them to this. Now, there may be other better brands. I don't know. So, as I said, I'm not recommending this, but it's an option. It's around about $25 Australian. I don't know what it is or which exactly stores sell it. You'd have to go onto their website and find out more about it. Now, in regards to basically, if you've basically resolved all those issues and even this doesn't work for you, no milk, you've basically worked out you've done the different variations, the casein side of things, you've done the lactose side of things, and that you can say, okay, I'm definitely not really reacting well. I must be sensitive to milk from cows in general. At least you can confirm that and get that out of the way and stop basically persisting with something and head against the wall. So then there's another option. You can try basically a goat milk. So this is actually an Australian raw goat milk. It's in New South Wales. It's in the same state as the city of Sydney is. So that's just for overseas that may not be aware of that. So this New South Wales, which is certified, the New South Wales Health Department, so it's fine. It's gone. And at the same time, it's a good raw goat milk from what I've from second sources. I haven't tried it myself. I can't get access to it in Tasmania, unfortunately. So I would love to, but it's one of those things. There is another brand down here that they pasteurize it, but at a much lower temperature, not as a severe temperature, some of the commercial pasteurization. And I sort of occasionally get that because I enjoy goat's milk, but it's really hard. There are some times that I'm able to, maybe not confirming, that I can access from some island south of Hobart, but I can't confirm nor deny. And yes, and so basically, I get the pleasure of trying something that I enjoy. But that's another option. You can try goat milk, and if it works for you, then at least you're sensitive to the actual, the lactose it wasn't an issue because you tried the lactose enzymes. That didn't seem to make any difference. You can try, because the profile of goat milk is very close to human milk. Sort of its fatty acid profile is very similar. Like it's short chain fatty acids and medium chain triglycerides are very to human to the human profile as well, which is really good in that regard, for ketone bodies and for health in that regard. I mean, you do have organisations like PETA, yes, our dear friends the veg tarts, and they are very hostile towards goat milk. I mean, you just have to go to their website. They're even more hostile than to cow's milk. It's just crazy. So again, the cute furry animal syndrome that they suffer, unfortunately. And, they will say, it's got more cholesterol and more saturated fat. That's true than cow's milk. And they will bag it silly. But that's the good thing about it, because it has those things which are very helpful for the human brain. And I just came across this sort of site, which is mothers that have got kids with issues. This mother's got an autistic kid, and she just basically says, I put my daughter on goat milk from about September, October 2008. We found she improved a lot. However, we're not sure it was the milk or in fact that she enjoyed school and was getting better. So, but I don't think kids that have got autism, from my own knowledge, really feel it doesn't really matter whether they're at school or they're basically at home with a lot of people around. They do tend to be a bit more agitated. So I think it's actually those healthy saturated fat and cholesterol that's especially the medium chain triglycerides that create ketone bodies for the brain. It's very similar without the salicylate issue that you would get from coconut milk. So coconut milk's got salicylates, which is a problem for some people, especially Northern Europeans that are more sensitive. Southern Europeans aren't as much, very rare. They've got some genetic, because I've been exposed to salicylates for a very long time, so I don't react at all. But I've heard that there are Northern Europeans that do. The percentage, I'm not sure in terms of that. I haven't really investigated it to any depth. So basically, we ran out of goat milk, and hadn't got back around to getting it, and had been off for a week due to cost, and which is costly. And she basically says it's double the price of normal milk. Her behaviour's got irrational, and she's becoming emotional again. And we are not sure if it's because of the school stopping or because of the milk. The lack of the milk, the lack of that good nutrition for that child, that probably needs it far more than any of us, when you're struggling to get more energy to the brain and all that. So, and let alone if you think about it, those short chain fatty acids and medium chain triglycerides the short chain fatty acids are so beneficial to the gut. And we know that there is a gut nexus for autism as well. Most kids that are autistic have a lot of gut issues. So this is a really good food for kids with those sort of issues. And many parents that have learnt about goat's milk, because it's got a similar profile to human milk. So how could it be bad? Only in the minds of PETA could it be bad, those crazies, vegans. So yes, so that's your other option in that regard, and you could play around with the lactose enzyme and see whether because you may still not. I don't really feel that fantastic. You throw in the lactase enzyme, and it works for you, and you go, okay, I'm lactose intolerant, or at least you can take that part out. If you can get, for instance, raw, then at least you can say, okay, I've got one allele missing. So it's the same thing that we did that you would do with the cow's milk, to sort of tease out what could be the issue, and the same approach you would take. So you would check the casein part first, then the lactose part, then basically, and you would switch between these sort of brands in order to tease out what it could be. Obviously, you wouldn't have to do the A1, A2 type thing for goats and all that. There, you're only looking at the lactose the component. You're doing a comparison. So it's a few steps, and at least you can tease out what you're reacting to, and at least say, well, okay, I'm reacting to these things. I mean, you could even try. I mean, I've known people that haven't reacted well to cow's milk, and they never tried goats or that, but they had access to horse milk, and no problems whatsoever. So even though horse milk has far more galactose than cow's milk, so it may be that sort of just genetics, the sort of that those old genes that we're more adapted to that sort of milk. Look, personally, I've never tried it, so I can't tell you. I haven't tried. I have tried camels once, but it was a commercial one. It wasn't. It wasn't basically, sort of you could say healthy one. It was sort of mixed into something, so it's really hard. To tell you exactly the taste or all that. And that was in my bad old days anyway. And had some sweetener in it and all that. So it's really hard I couldn't tell you what it really tastes like. But and I wouldn't consider that a test, a real test. You have to have, something which is plain milk to really be able to do these tests. I hope that helps those people who are struggling, who have sort of fixed their gut, fixed their stomach, and are still saying, well, why am I, why isn't this working for me? So at least then you can tease out the different milk types, and at least, within your own mind, work out what basically works for you and what doesn't. And at least then you can sort of consider, it doesn't mean you have to jettison cow dairy. There are parts of cow dairy where the lactose is basically fermented out, especially cheeses and stuff like that. And, small quantities, maybe not an issue, So it's a matter of playing around, like going back to a standard carnivore diet without any dairy, and then trying these different components and seeing how they work. So you need to settle down and then try the next part. And it's the same thing. Cow, settle down, then try the goat. So you've given yourself a couple of days to go back to sort of base level, and then try the other part to see how am I reacting. And I would do it like I'd look at the cow part in 1 week, the goat part another week, so I would keep it quite separate so you can tease out the sort of the sensitivities, because it sometimes takes a few days to sort of settle down again. And if it means, it requires 4 or 5 days to settle down, use those extra days, because otherwise you may still have some level, of underlying inflammation there or reactivity. And so you try something which normally you wouldn't react badly to, but that little extra, may interact in a complicated way which we don't understand. So it's always really important to think about those things. Go back to base level, and then test another thing. Never sort of put one on top of the other, because you're confounding everything and making it very hard for yourself to work out and tease out what you're reacting or what your body doesn't really like in that regard. Look, I hope this sort of helps people that enjoy dairy and love dairy, and they can play around and try to work out the best way to the profile or the way to eat and consume dairy and enjoy dairy in the future. Take care. Views on the upcoming live streams. Please like and subscribe, and take care, and we'll chat soon. Okay, see yous.